your trucking company doesn't have to look like the neighbors.
You're listening to the BulkLoads podcast, your number one resource in everything bulk freight trucking. And this is episode 224.
Hey guys, Jared Flynn with the BulkLoads podcast. Got Tyler with me.
What's going on?
Oh, fuels, what's going on?
Yeah, no kidding.
And I drive a diesel pickup, and like every time I drive past these gas stations, I mean, it's unreal how much, fuel keeps going up.
Yeah.
And I know you're listening on the other side of the mic, or listen to this podcast being like, well, you have no idea, Jared. Like, think about filling up your rig every day.
Right.
But that's what I want to talk about for the tip of this week. For many of you all that don't know, we actually offer a fuel card through Smart Freight Funding, our factoring company. And the way it works, it's really simple. When you sign up on Smart Freight Funding, they will issue you a fuel card. And then you can go fill up, and it's good at most of the truck stops. I'm not going to go through and name them all. But most of those truck stops, you can usually save on average of 17 to 20 cents a gallon by using the card. And more importantly, we pay for the fuel usage during the week. So once you fill the truck up into the week, you turn in your tickets or send in your invoices, and then we subtract that fuel balance off. So we actually float the fuel for you. So you're getting the savings on the fuel, and then we also pay for the fuel up front. So you don't have to worry for that out-of-pocket cost. So the tip I want to give this week, if you are interested in fuel cards, and again, there's no contract or commitment on this fuel cards. If you want, we'll issue a fuel card if you're part of Smart Freight, and you can test it out and use it. I tell people all the time, figure out where you can get the best deals. Maybe you are using multiple fuel cards or fuel programs. If you can get it cheaper with one card, use that one. If you can get it cheaper with ours, use that card and use it to your advantage. We know that fuel is a high expense for the trucking industry. Anything you can do to save is that much money in your pocket. So again, the tip I want to give you this week, check us out at Smart Freight Funding for a fuel card. You can go to our website or give us a call here. We can get you directed and get you in the right hands for that.
Right.
So, well, today we're going to bring on Tanner Winterhof. He is another podcaster. Actually, him and three others, they have started the Farm for Profit podcast, which I guess, in my opinion, it's probably one of the larger ag podcasts out there in the space. And they go to trade shows with it. All three of them, they actually kind of have different backgrounds. Tanner is a banker by trade. Another guy, Corey, he's actually a farmer. And then David actually is a realtor, but they use their combined knowledge to talk about farming and how to make profits with farming. We're not going to go too much in the weeds. This is a really good podcast that Tanner agreed to come on and do with us, and I'll kind of let him take the lead. But actually, this thing went several different angles, but I was actually surprised how much we got into talking about trucking alone and how much he knew about trucking. I thought it was going to be more just talking about farming and grain and all that, but we really talked about how important trucking is to these farming operations. So I think you're going to get a lot out of that alone on this podcast.
And I think we share some of the same similarities there, because they're all about making the farmer more profitable in the ag space, and we are too, just on the trucking side. But I tell you, it's amazing the time that we're in with podcasts, how much knowledge you can gain from these episodes. If you are a farmer or a trucker out there, listen to this one closely.
Yeah. So we encourage you, and Tyler will put their links in the episode notes here so you can quickly go over and look at the Farm for Profit podcast as well. So with that said, here's my conversation with Tanner Winterhof with Farm for Profit. Hey, Tanner, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. This should be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, I told you earlier, we've taken this initiative to bring other podcasts on, or other people that run podcasts. You are one of them. So with that said, give us a little taste of what Farm for Profit is.
Yeah, so Farm for Profit, it started off as being an agriculture podcast focused on helping farmers achieve higher levels of profitability. And it's evolved into an entertainment platform for anybody who's curious about agriculture, curious about making yourself a better person, and curious about maybe learning how to drive profitability, whether that's in your personal life, in your business, or in your farm. We kind of now have evolved to take on a broader audience, but we focus on 2 shows a week. Our Monday show we refer to as a Farm for Profit episode, we typically tackle topics like tax accounting or the latest technology is available. We've got one coming up about data in the cloud. We've done shows on agronomy. We hit more serious type context to really hit the business side of the farm and your business. And then Thursdays, we release what are called Farm for Fun episodes, where we focus on the person. So you're still going to grab value out of the episode as to how you might do something differently in your life or in your operation. But we kick back, usually have something to drink with an alcoholic beverage and have a good time.
Yeah.
Just giving a little bit of a different format.
So talk about, because it's not just you, there's three of you all, and you all have full-time jobs. This is something more on the side, right?
That's correct. Yes. So I am a banker by trade. So I have a finance degree. So I am in the banking industry professionally. I have an agricultural background, as both my family and my in-laws are still actively farming in agriculture, both swine, cattle, and row crops. My co-host, Dave Whitaker, is a state champion auctioneer, placed third in the world this year. So he, by day, is an auctioneer and realtor, one of the fastest talkers in the United States. But I promise you, if you listen, we slow him down a little bit. But then he and his wife also have a purebred cattle herd. And then Corey, my third co-host, is a farmer seed salesman. So he, his brother, and his dad have a hog operation as well as corn and soybean farm. But we're all right here in central Iowa doing the podcast together.
So is it intimidating, someone like David being a partner on the show, having a professional voice versus?
It's fun to answer questions about the three of us because we are three completely different people. So I'm clearly analytical. That's what is just ingrained with me. So I'm the details guy. Some people call me the podcast mom. I'm the one that, schedules, make sure everything is online and on point. Dave is the curious person. He's just curious about everything, whether it's an antique auction or he's going to sell off, expensive cars or airplanes. The guy's just always inquisitive to learn something new. And he likes to come in almost blind to the conversation. So he can react like you as the listener would. And then Corey is trying to figure out how every conversation we have is going to apply to his farm, because he believes if he can get his questions answered, that's going to help the listeners, really relate to what's going on. But then the best part about Corey is he's our people person. He's the one that cares about every single person. If we might have talked to you a year ago, he wants to know what happened to your dog, or he wants to know, how your grandpa's doing. So it's fun to get the personalities. But intimidation, I don't think that's there anymore. It might have been something in the beginning. But right now, we really just rely on each other for all the unique personality traits.
That's awesome. Yeah, and to have such a diverse group. You all bring just a little different angle to the table, which just makes it that much more valuable as a podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't do it by myself. We've tried. The other good thing about having three of us is sometimes only two of us make it to a recording.
Yeah.
And when that happens, the show takes on a little bit different characteristic. I've hosted a couple by myself, and they're not the same. I miss my buddies when that happens.
I was looking, and you guys have grown this. How long has it been out? And you guys go to trade shows. This isn't just something you guys put out. And this is out there for people to see, to visit you all at different events, conventions.
Yeah, the wild part that really sprung us was our involvement on TikTok. We had not really promoted ourselves well, because I started this as a way to deliver educational message to my customers, to help them make more money, to help my payments get made, so nobody went past due on their loan payments. And it's gone so much further than we had ever expected, to where, we are blessed to be in, I think, the top 150 podcasts for education and investing. Just the amount of people that have chosen to listen is unfathomable. You imagine putting them into a room together, and you can't think of standing in front of that many people, let alone we're talking to them every single week. But that's afforded us these opportunities to have some really cool corporate sponsors. I know we're going to be at the Iowa Ag Expo in Des Moines. We're headed to National Farm Machinery Show in Louisville, probably back to Farm Progress Show in Illinois, Decatur, Illinois next year. But those are fun Jared. You get to meet the people that listen to you all the time, but they're also a little bit awkward because they know you. They know you really well because they listen to you 2 times a week, every week out of the year. So they know that your girls were playing softball, or they know what your family was doing, and you're meeting these people for the first time. And I just feel guilty, like I should know you.
Yeah,
And
you're bringing them into your story without knowing their story.
correct.
I can
Yeah,
remember I was at the Mid America Truck Show last March in Louisville, Kentucky, but I had guys come up. They're like, "I listen to your podcast every week," and I'm like, "That's awesome. What's your name?" And you try to get to know them. But yeah, I hear exactly what you're saying. I love what you said about really educating a lot of your own customers, so they can be profitable. And I want to transition, and that's where I kind of want this conversation to go. We started BulkLoads, again, very similar, that, hey, we wanted to educate our truck drivers, merchandisers, but especially these guys, these small business owners, to how do we get them to understand business more, make more money, be profitable, so they can be self-sustaining, grow their businesses. And I say this, really, over the past 4 years, we've become like one of the top trucking podcasts because people use it as a playbook. I mean, they have a playbook now of every little angle that they can use to hopefully be successful in the trucking industry. But I want to go back to yours. You're a banker by trade, and you said, you want to keep people informed so they can make more money, but really to make their payment. I want to talk about just farming in general, because again, there's so much overlap with what we do in farming. A lot of our customers, or a lot of our listeners and users, are farmers on BulkLoads. But talk about how farming and profit has changed really over the past couple decades.
Well, it's just so much more of a global decision-making opportunity right now that we can't rely on the news that's in our backyard. Just because you didn't get rain or your neighbors didn't get rain doesn't mean that the crops in other states aren't doing well. And you'll need to make marketing decisions based on what's happening globally, let alone just what's in your area. But what I see that has changed the most is it triggered about 3 years ago. I was listening to an Iowa State football game on the radio, and Pioneer Hybrids, I know some people love them and some people hate them, was running a commercial that stated the number of occupations that a farmer takes on the role of during various times a year: the agronomy role, the tax accountant role, the bookkeeper role, the manager role, the mechanics role, just the number of things that the farmer does. I actually see that transitioning further away, and we're getting specialized talent in the farmer themselves. But now we're building advisory teams around the farmer. And that's what I could see a lot of your listeners benefiting from as well. Is you don't have to be a good mechanic, but you need to find a good mechanic to team up with. You don't have to be a great bookkeeper, but you need to be able to find a good accountant or a good bookkeeper to team up with, because you might be a really good motivator. And maybe you've got guys running fleets of trucks and they're really good at keeping their truckers happy because they understand what they need. They want to be home on the weekends. They want local routes. They want backhauls, whatever it is. Maybe you're really good at communicating, and dive into that and power into that. It's not always the same farm that grandpa had.
Yeah.
And the younger generations are realizing that it doesn't have to be the same. So if they would rather do the strategic planning instead of operate the equipment, they go find good operators.
It's funny. It's the same clientele that we have. And again, and I really say like it is probably the same person in retrospects. A lot of these small business owners, owner operators that we deal with, Tanner, again, they're the driver, the mechanic, the accountant,
Yeah.
the superintendent. Yeah, they're taking care of everything. And we've almost said the same thing. It's like, hey, find out what's going to move the needle more for you, and those other things do less of. And it's you don't know as much about some of our other business segments, but we now have a payment solutions that these truckers can use. We have a factoring service called Smart Freight. They can get all their receivable or all their invoices paid next day. They're not out there having to collect, spend all that time worrying about when the checks come in the mail. We have a fuel card. We have insurance that we can deal. But I love what you said. It's like it's changed. Like, you don't have to be every element of that business. Again, when you're starting, you may have to be, but as you develop and as the technology comes into play, like you can automate a lot of those systems to be more effective and more successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And the best thing about it is your business, your fleet, your trucking company doesn't have to look like the neighbors
Hmm.
to be successful, because you get to determine what success looks like. If you're comfortable having your bills paid, but you get to have 4-day weekends and that's what you want, great. If you'd rather run straight over the road for a month so that way you can afford whatever type of goals you have, great. You have to figure that out. And we have an episode that we aired the last show in December of 2021 that was titled "The Most Common Traits of Successful Farmers."
Hmm.
And it's not just going to apply to farmers. It pretty much applies if you want to be a successful human.
Yeah.
And we had been asking for almost all of 2021, every one of our guests, what they thought the most successful people they knew had in common. And then we compiled that. So it was such a fun end of year. We got to kick back. We had a couple of cocktails and we just dissected what all of the people that we knew. We were honored just in this instance to be invited or have someone invited say yes to our podcast. And now they left us with this nugget on every single show, and we were able to put that together. But out of that conversation, you just kind of learn that it starts off just by being a human and by playing to your strengths.
I'm going to go back and I wrote that down. I'm going to actually listen to that. But can you remember just a couple of those that people shared, some of the most common ones off the top of your head?
As we dove into those conversations, it was fun to break them out. And I go back to the advisory team again, whether you were working directly with an accountant and an attorney, or you were working with mentors. It seemed like everybody always had an advisory team surrounding them. Another category that we had put together is that they were continually learning. And I think a lot of your listeners already fall into this category. I know ours do. I mean, you don't listen to a podcast called Farm for Profit because you're looking to get jokes and, smile and laugh the entire time. It's a dedication just to pull up the podcast for the first time. Same thing with yours, unless it's got a catchy title and you're going to try and pull in audiences that aren't even related to your industry, they're going to be in the same side of things. Another one that we had was they farm like it's their business. Same thing with your listeners. If they're running a trucking company, you got to treat it like a business. There's so many in both industries that do this because their dad, grandpa, grandma, their family's been doing it forever. Well, my family's always been, my family's always been truckers. Well, you got to really make sure that if you want to leave a legacy behind, you've got to treat this like a business because those that went ahead of you also had done the same thing. And then one of the last ones that, to me, it was the hardest one to really put a lot of weight into at the moment. But when reflecting was they don't work. They have fun. They are literally enjoying what they're doing. And we judged from the beginning in our podcast that we will do this podcast until it is no longer fun.
Mm.
And we're still having a blast. So we're going to keep doing the podcast. But the moment that it becomes work, we'll probably find something else to do.
And maybe just think of and again, I want to spin this back on farming, but you hear some of these, older farmers again, and farming is a tough occupation. And again, back in the day, I mean, very physically demanding. I mean, still a little bit today, but less than what it was because of technology and machinery. But you'd hear stories of, your grandpa or great grandpa working themselves literally to death. I mean, dying out in the field with physical labor. What I want to ask on the flip side of what you just said, successful people though, and again, I'm putting you on the spot. You're a banker, so you've seen the not so successful ones, the ones that have had to fold up. Probably you're the one that having those difficult conversations about making payments, to you as the banker. I mean, I really want to hear, I'm sure people are now leaning in, what have the not so successful people or the people that have failed? What do they have in common? If you could just even name a few of them.
Yeah, I would just real quick to touch back on the comment you made about farming being tough. I think all areas of trades were tougher physically in the past,
Yeah.
and we've had a lot of advancements in technology to ease that up. But I feel like they have now gotten tougher to the mental aspect because of
Mm.
increased regulation, laws. Those, even if you're a plumber, you now have different codes that you have to adhere to where, yeah, the toughness and format just changed. But to those that don't do things as well, the first three words that came to my mind were the victim, arrogance, and isolation. And the reason those come up, obviously, there was somebody in my local circle that I thought of when I thought of somebody that wasn't being successful. And the first one to me, the victim category, is it's never their fault. It's
Mm.
always somebody else's fault. God, my truck broke down because I can't get paid enough from somebody else in order to do the maintenance I need to, or I can't trust my mechanic. It's never something that they themselves did or owned up to. Gosh, this is it. It's the machine itself.
You see me laughing on the
It's the
end. I've
combine.
heard this. I mean,
Yeah,
over and over
yeah,
from people over the past. Yeah.
yeah. I can't believe Verizon put $110 charge for a late payment when it wasn't my fault. The money wasn't in my account. It didn't get deposited. You should use the BulkLoads program. Everything that happens that doesn't go smoothly is not their fault. The second one was arrogance, and I think that's more of a tough one to really classify because there's a difference in confidence and arrogance, at least to me,
Mm-hmm.
to where there's a lot of very confident business owners out there. But I think when it flips to arrogance and it's an I, me, my, so we just talked about a victim that it was never their fault, and now it's 100% about me. They don't last very long. There might be short term success, but the ones that I'm thinking of right now don't have long term success. And then the last one goes back to what we preach on our podcast all the time about that advisory team is isolation. It's the ones that are trying to make a decision in their own silo. But I can't imagine that being any of your listeners because they're here getting advice, listening to the content that you're putting together. They may be sitting by themselves driving down the road, but they're not in isolation. They're still gathering an opinion, still gathering another point of view. But those are the first three things that popped in my mind.
We recently had a banker, commercial banker, on our show, but he made a comment that one way you can utilize the bank, especially if you're a new business or just starting out, he goes, use your bank almost as an advisory board or a coaching board for you to help you make those decisions. And I never thought about that, but again, when you're starting off, you don't have a lot of resources, but like, that's one way that you can actually utilize your bank to hopefully kind of help you make some of these decisions. Because again, they want to see you succeed. I mean, for a number of reasons. I mean, they just as a person, but also because they have skin in the game. But
Right.
again,
And
yeah, go ahead.
just think about your problem is not typically unique. And especially if it's related to money, we've probably seen or heard it from somebody else to where we could provide perspective. Now, you're probably very rarely going to get a banker to tell you, yes, go do this, because we can be held liable.
Right.
Lender liability laws don't allow us to do that specifically, but we'll be able to tell you, John's company over here, or I've witnessed a company over here that is doing it like this. Maybe you could look into that. But one of the things that has led to the most success in my career, banking wise, is what I call being the banker on the bench. Every baseball team has a whole slew of pitchers, and they don't get to play every game, but they have to be ready to step in at a moment's notice and jump in. So I would encourage your listeners that if you are going to start using a banker as a sounding board, get two of them, get three, develop a relationship with more than one. So that way, if you come down to a point to where you need to go update your fleet and you're looking for good advice, you can now get advice from three different lenders and move forward with making a decision based upon a pool of answers rather than just one person. And secondly, I mean, it never hurts to have a backup. One tells you no, but you believe in it. You can find two others that might say yes. So that's just something that's really helped me out. Is I'm the banker on the bench for a lot of different people, and I may never give them a loan, but at least I've got that relationship.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Tanner, I told you I wasn't going to keep you too long. I have one last kind of question, or one question I'm going to ask. Over the past couple of years being in the industry, and even your show, Farm for Profit, how has the market been for farmers, agribusinessmen, really over the past couple of years?
Well, I would say if you're talking to a farmer right now and they're complaining about how difficult it's been, don't don't take that comment for granted, but ultimately no, it's been some of the best years in agriculture. I mean,
Mm,
we've seen some of the highest levels of profitability. They've received some government funding depending upon where you're at. Now, inputs have increased, margins are a little bit compressed, but ultimately there's been marketing windows for their commodity, corn, beans, wheat, cattle, hogs, the main listeners that we cater to on our podcast, to where they can earn a very solid living. Now, it's been difficult, like most industries, to source products, whether it's upgrading equipment or trying to get inputs at a reasonable price for your crops. There's been different challenges, but ultimately it's been fairly profitable. And, for your client base, transporting those commodities could be even more important, as we look at different forms of infrastructure potentially not being available, to where it's going to rely a lot more of putting it on an 18 wheeler or more, to get things put together. But overall, in agriculture, we're coming out of a pretty good segment. The forecast into next year still looks fine. Obviously, inputs are rising, the cost of fuel, cost of fertilizer,
hmm
cost of feed, but ultimately there's still a positive margin. So we should be good for a while.
Yeah, and I think my listeners would say the same thing. It's obviously we've all had the fair share of challenges, but guys I'm talking to on the trucking side, it's been best ever years ever. These guys are expanding now. Again, trying to find new equipment at a reasonable price, inputs, all that's another game. But these guys have more room to grow than they've ever had to grow. It's like, again, you think about some of these weird times that we're in, but a lot of businesses have been able to thrive because of these disruptions, for lack of better terms. So I think this has been an awesome time. Some people want to clamp down, but this is some of the best times you could have as well.
Yeah, it's certainly one of those, to where if you've got the strategic motivation for growth in your business or your farm, there's been opportunities and there's going to be opportunities in the near future that you could take advantage of. So if you don't or haven't put a plan together that could involve that, yeah, I'd start looking at it, because there's going to be some leaving the industry just due to age, others due to poor financial decision making, and that's going to present some opportunities for those that are ready to rock on.
Awesome. Well, Tanner, man, thanks for taking the time today to come on here. We're going to put the links actually in the episode notes. So if you're listening right now, you'll be able to jump right down and actually click and get directed to them. But just for listeners out there, where would they find you all?
Yep, our website is farmforprofit.com. That's the number 4. So FARM, the number 4 profit.com. You can find us on all platforms: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. We also have a YouTube channel. We're looking for subscribers out there. So if they can help me out anywhere and they're looking for some entertainment, Farm, the number 4 profit, you can get us there. Our website also has our text in and leave a voicemail number. So if they want to be ornery, those all come to my phone. And I have fun sifting through those.
I don't know if I'm that brave. Actually, I have put my cell out there for people to text. So, but that's awesome. Well, Tanner, hey, man, it's been great talking to you. Great to meet you. Hopefully, I'll see you out there on the road. I mean, we do several different shows, so I'm sure hopefully we'll run into each other. So, thanks again for coming on.
Awesome. Thank you.
What'd you think, Tyler?
Tanner brought a lot of great information. One of the bits that he kind of talked about was that farmers and truckers both have to look at their operation as a business, which I think some guys can get caught up with the passion of it all. They don't maybe look at it as a job. At the end of the day, he says you have to look at it like a business, and you have to make those business decisions to be more profitable.
Yeah. He also mentioned how your trucking company doesn't have to look like your neighbors.
Yep.
And I love that in the fact that, people kind of put all trucking companies into one bucket. and your cost may be different than your neighbor's cost. And so you need to treat your company like yours and how you manage it and your cost versus your neighbors. So I just love that. And I mean, that's just a lifelong, a valuable lesson. Don't compare yourself to others out there. Run your business and treat it as yours and not like your neighbors.
Right. Yep. Everyone's going to have different costs, different rates, what they need to get, stuff like that.
Yeah. So cool. Well, as always, we thank you for listening to the Bulk Loads podcast. Oh, a couple quick things. Hey, we are in the process of putting together our first ever Bulk Loads conference. We're going to do an invite only. This is going to be held here in Springfield, Missouri. We're super excited. The dates on it, Tyler, are in February. I mean,
Yep,
it's going to
looks like February.
It's going to be really quick. But we've always wanted to get this out there and get some of the, I would say, industry experts out there to come together and look at some of the problems that we face as a bulk community and how we can solve those problems. But I say this to you all listening: if you are interested in attending, let us know. And if you want to come, I know talking to a lot of guys, I mean, you're busy in the trucks. I mean, to get away for 2 days, that's not going to make any sense. That truck's not going to be running. But if you do want to come and join us, get a hold of us, and we'd love to see if we can get you there and part of our conference.
Yeah, very excited for it.
Yep. So awesome. Well, thank you again for listening to the Bulk Loads podcast, and God bless.